Hello, today in this video we're going to talk about the attempts at modernization by Nanjing government. But before we talk about what they did and about their policies, I think it's important for us to review a little about the difficulties and political backgrounds at that time. So these four, I think, were the major difficulties faced by the Nanjing government at that time. Firstly, the rebellious new warlords. Because at that time, many generals under Kuomintang who were formerly under the warlords still dominated their regions. We're going to talk about why the name is New Warlords and what's the difference between these new warlords and the old warlords. And secondly, the dissident politicians within Kuomintang and Nanjing government. Actually, at that time, the Nanjing government only controlled the region at the lower Changjiang Valley and was only united superficially at that time. And thirdly, the communist opposition in the southeast China. So at that time, actually communists, since they were expanding their power, they occupied some parts of China. Last but not the least, the foreign aggression in China, especially from Japan. So their aggression actually take a very important role for, I would say, for the Nanjing government and also the policy of Nanjing government. We'll talk about this later. So firstly, for these four difficulties, I'm going to focus on the first one and then the last one to talk more about what is relevant. Firstly, the rebellious new warlords. So these warlords, for example, in these pictures, we have Li Zuoren, Feng Yuxiang, and Yan Xishan. So these people, they were the new warlords. Why they're new? It's because in Northern expedition, since it should be a total success to eliminate the warlords, shouldn't be any warlords, right? That's why they were the new ones. And these new ones actually they have a mutual accommodation with Chiang Kai-shek after the Northern expedition. So in this mutual accommodation, on one hand, they confirmed warlords' semi-independent regional status, just as I said. Some of them still dominating that place just like the old times. But in giving them this kind of independence, actually what they were asking is these warlords their recognition of Nanjing as the central and only official government in China. When we talk of warlords, it always sounds like a negative word, right? But actually at that time, warlords, they still have their progressive aspect. Even when I talk about the warlord era, I still mention this progressive aspect, right? Some warlords, they were in fact quite progressive in outlook. Some of them, they like new technology. They try to improve the agricultural technology in their own places, which are actually helping China to promote this kind of modernization. But even though we said they're progressive, still we have to see these warlords, and according to mutual accommodation, actually they didn't really have that kind of sense of belonging to the government. So they lack the sense of national commitment. So if the Nanjing government asked them to sacrifice something, asked them for example, for money, for people, for labor force, or for materials, maybe since they were the new warlords, maybe they still can say no, and they won't be willing to help the Nanjing government out, right? So their cooperation with Nanjing was possible as long as their interests did not collide. That means as long as the Nanjing government support their independence, yes, they will make some commitments. If their interests collide, the warlords would act as they saw fit, or perhaps challenge Nanjing to contest. So that means they won't make any surrender to their semi-independence at least. So Chiang Kai-shek, actually, he tried to solve this problem. He's asking for amalgamation of splinter military groups. What does it mean by amalgamation of splinter military groups? Actually, simply speaking, it is about the combination of national command, combination of different military. That means the Kuomintang Third National Congress called for this kind of amalgamation into one national command. It's like different army in different areas should all under the national command instead of under the warlords or under other to be the separate military group. They should be integrated together. The reorganization of all troops into one national army actually, and the centralization of local financial administrations. Do you think there's any possibility that these new warlords, they will like to surrender and sacrifice their interests and just let Chiang Kai-shek to have his national army? Of course not, right? So this has become constant difficulties and constant obstacles for Chiang Kai-shek while he's trying to unify the military groups, when he's trying to do anything with the warlords. And next, I'm going to mention a little about the foreign aggression in China from Japan. So maybe the first question is, why China? And why 1931? This is about, when we talk about the causes of the history, the chance and necessity can be very important. That means China is always here, right? So it's about the necessity. That means something must happen. But why it happened in 1931? It mostly something happened during that short period. So this is mostly by chance. So I'm going to show you some causes. I would like you to tell me if that causes is more of explaining why China, that means the necessity, or more of an explanation on by chance, that is in 1931. Firstly, internationally, the Western powers hard hit by the Great Depression were too involved with domestic problems, so blocked Japanese aggression and the powers of League of Nations. That is mainly talking about the necessity or the chance. Of course, the chance, right? Because something happened in a short period and caused a direct result, which is the depression of Japan. So they want to solve their domestic problems by invading other places, to crave for materials and resources to help them to build their own country, right? Manchuria, vast territory and natural wealth, could alleviate the crowded condition and limited resources of China. So of course it's about China. No matter what happened in China, we're having a vast territory and natural wealth, right? So this is about the necessity part. That means the things must happen somehow in some time, but just waiting for that chance. Next, within Japan, omnious signs, that means different signs, economic and social distress were appearing even before the Great Depression. That means even before that, Japan, they were having some economic depression because limited territory and limited natural resources, right? So this is also about necessity. They always try to find out one solution for these problems. And then China was deeply mired into domestic turmoil and natural disaster. That means in China, we're having our own domestic problems. So this time will tend to be a very weak time for China. So it can be a very good chance, so by chance, for Japan, right? The northeast of China can be used as a bulwark against the Soviet southern advance and as a supply base in the event of war with the US. Because at that time, the relationship between Soviet Union and Japan, of course, not a very good one, right? And also, Japan, since they were expanding their influence in the ocean, so they're still somehow will confronting the US. So they need China to be the supply base for them to have an advantage position in these conflicts. So this is of course, I think it's more of a necessity. So because it is always the aggression to do things in the Pacific region, right? So in next video, we're going to talk about what modernization reforms did the Nanjing government really carry out.